Hello and welcome to another episode of Taking the Supply Chain Pulse. I'm Megan with St. Onge Company, and I'm here to introduce this week's guest, Ken Jensen from the University of Vermont Health Network, here to discuss disaster planning and crisis mitigation. Take it away, Fred.
How to make your supply chain ready for things that happen that you may not know anything at all about. Ken has got an interesting background. He's a former Navy lieutenant. He worked for Keurig Green Mountain Coffee, so he's come from outside of healthcare into healthcare, working in a very forward thinking health system in Vermont, where Charlie Michelli was the former leader. So Ken, it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thanks, Fred. Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Ken, your background and how you got to UVM.
Well, I think you already did, but I'll try to add a little color. I did spend quite a bit of time in the Navy. I did my first stint was enlisted. I was a nuke electrician submariner. I was then got out and went to school back home at University of Rochester in New York, where I grew up, and received a commission and went back as a surface warfare officer. And I got out, as you said, as a lieutenant. When I transitioned out of the service, and I was not in supply chain when I was in the service, got interested after I got out. I started working for Cargill. I worked in their sweeteners division, business unit. I worked down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We located to Tennessee because my wife's family had some brothers that were in Memphis. I had some family that was up in Louisville. We were close enough for holidays, but not close enough for dinner. And we relocated to Chattanooga when I got out of the service. I started working there in a manufacturing and distribution terminal for the sweeteners business. So a lot of sugar, cocoa sugar, blended cocoa sugar, corn syrups, sweet fructose corn syrup that we were delivering to the region. And then we, my wife and I had kids, and we were taking my oldest daughter to daycare one day, and we were singing along to the ABC song, and we got to I for Isabel the inchworm, and there it was Isabel, and we said, no, we've got to get back north. We've got to go. She and I are both from New England. She's French Canadian. I'm from Rochester, as I said, and so we came up to Vermont maybe a little bit sooner than we had originally planned, but we had always hoped that we would land here. And then I came up here and started working for Green Mountain Coffee Roasters, Keurig Green Mountain Coffee Roasters in supply chain. So I had Vermont Distribution, Multi-Channel Distribution Center, ASRS, here in Waterbury, Vermont, and then joined a it was how do I say this? It was a consumer packaged good model where you put various specialties together. And I did the supply chain side of our partners program. So when we started working with our Starbucks, our Dunkin', our Smuckers, Kraft, all of those partners that were co-manufacturing or that we were branding in the K-Cups, started working on the design, contracting and supply and operational design for those programs. I was here in Vermont and then got linked in with Charlie, and history from there. He was interested in bringing in some supply chain experience that maybe didn't grow up in healthcare specifically. And it was just a great opportunity and perfect timing.
Yeah, what's interesting?
That's who I am.
Well, about three things came out of that conversation. I don't know if you know it or not, but I was born and raised in upstate New York. I'm from Corning, graduated from high school in Bath, New York. So that's not very far away from Rochester. Number two, if I were to stereotype people, I would say you've got to be a short guy because you were a submariner. You can't be too tall to be a submariner. Is that a fair statement?
You have less bumps on your head if you are shorter. I'm 5'7".
Yeah, there you go. See,
I don't have a lot of bumps on my head.
I'm 6'3.5". I thought David Robinson wanted to be a submariner when he was in at the Naval Academy, and of course he was what 6'11" or so. That was a problem. Uh, and and then of course you talk about Charlie. The thing that I think is ironic is that you're coming into healthcare, because I want to talk about what you learned from your other industries that you brought to healthcare, but you're coming into healthcare where the emphasis is always on improving processes and saving money, from having worked for a company that purposely sells something at about 4 times the cost in a little pod as it would if you made a whole pot of coffee with it. How were you able to get around that?
I've seen many razor blade models in healthcare as well, Fred, and you know that. That is not exclusive to outside of healthcare. Yeah, there's a lot of commonality, a lot of elements of supply chain management that are common to and elements of healthcare, and there are other elements that I wasn't exposed to coming in. The GPOs, the group purchasing organizations, their scope, breadth, and services that they provide was not something that I was familiar with outside of healthcare. So there's a lot of things that I brought with me, things that I may not use as much as I wish we could: sales and operations planning, manufacturing, scheduling and planning, the predictive analytics elements of it. I think that we still have a lot of opportunity in, but I think that there are some great learnings that I brought in with me, some that I've been able to take advantage of, others that I just didn't have exposure to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you're fortunate. For those folks that are out there that may have never seen this podcast before or listened to it. I mean, you work with Charlie Michelli. Charlie Michelli is easily one of the brightest guys that anyone could ever work with. He's also an imaginative guy that can see beyond the obvious and recognize possibilities in people that don't have a healthcare background. You have a pretty diverse team together there at the University of Vermont. Could you tell us about some of the members that Charlie has brought into the fray there, that including you?
Uh, So we do have a lot of very diverse backgrounds. I think that we have a good balance between those that grew up in and have years, decades of healthcare experience, and a lot of folks in operations that may be coming from other outside organizations. We also on our contracting team have the majority of them are all lawyers, right? So super helpful when we work with our general counsel and all of our local contracting, working with the regional NPC and GPOs as well. We've
Yeah,
got a bunch of
that was
different folks.
that was what I was struck by, was the number of lawyers that Charlie had hired to sort of develop real expertise in contracts and contracting. Do you think that that has really helped, having those types of insights?
I do. I think that Rachel Rains is our director of network contracting, and she and I have had conversations about this in the past, where it's not necessarily a requirement for the specific elements in the job description, but it is an enabler. And I think we've got it certainly makes us better having that exposure and experience, much the same way we do in operations.
Interesting. And of course, some of the people that Charlie has hired have to be able to sing so they can join the band.
Yes,
Um, the thing that
I cannot sing.
yeah, you're lucky. You avoided that. But the the reason we're going to have a three person podcast a couple of episodes ago, and you'd gotten tied up in something else. And the reason I wanted to have you on board in that 3-person episode was because the other 2 people, one was from a company called Resolink, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and the other one was Steve Downey from the Cleveland Clinic, which is a huge IDN with geography across the entire country, just about, with Ohio, Florida, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
You're sort of a medium-sized IDN, sort of located, in a specific and unique geography. I mean, your major fear is whether or not you're going to be invaded by Canada, or whether they might want to build a wall. Those are 2 things that are probably real. But you've been affected. You've gone through the same things that these other folks have. And so I was just going to ask, what specific unplanned for disruptions have you encountered during your time on the job? And what unique or what approaches to problem solving have you taken about those?
I think, like every other system, whether we're rural or large, we've experienced some of the same disruptions. I mean, the 3 things that are jumping out to me, probably because of recent events with Hurricane Helene and Baxter and the IV solutions, is Hurricane Maria and COVID, right? So I would point to those as recent unplanned disruptions that I've had an opportunity to be involved in. Anything that you want to know about those?
Yeah, I mean, how did it hit you? Were you caught off guard by Baxter going down, and if so, what did you do to mitigate it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you can. We do, and I know we'll talk a little bit later about some of the monitoring that we do to monitor for events or anything that could have an impact on our direct, second, or third tier suppliers. But there's a balance between what you can do and what the impact is. So the Baxter disruption, the length of time that this disruption, the scope and scale of the disruption, even if we had some and we have a service center that's offsite at the main hospital in Burlington, Vermont, where we oftentimes will take longer positions in inventory if we see, or any of our monitoring systems have any indication that there's something coming. With a hurricane, we didn't see that as much, but we typically had inventory positions that would have absorbed short-term disruptions. The challenge is, what's short-term, what's long-term? What kind of what is the extent of the efforts that you have to mitigate some of those disruptions? I think that's the hard piece to manage.
Well, I know that during COVID, for example, Charlie and you guys did a lot of partnering with local manufacturers, with linens and with things like that, to sort of be able to create a supply flow that wasn't there beforehand. I know that worked pretty well. Have you maintained any of those relationships since the pandemic ended?
We have. So it probably started with Hurricane Maria, where and it started with Charlie starting to gather this Vermont supply chain coalition. And so all of the hospitals in our system and the hospitals in Vermont, hospitals in NEA, or the New England Health Alliance for Health, which includes the Dartmouth Health System, and the state of Vermont, government representatives, emergency management resources, bringing those together and sharing, being very transparent with the challenges that we're facing, how we're addressing those. We looked at opportunities for us as a coalition to look at aggregation in buys for, and I'm going back to COVID at this point, right? So we looked at some of the supplies that we all were in need of and looking for opportunities for the state, Dartmouth and UVM, all to collaborate on in securing and bringing in that we otherwise might not have had access to. We did look at local providers for hand sanitizer. We aren't currently still using that, but we did look at that as well. We looked at creative ways to sterilize and reuse masks during the time. We looked at different types of respiration protection and, evaluated those to see how we could, prolong the inventory that we currently had and minimize any potential disruption.
And is that collaborative is something that continues today? I mean, the thing that struck me was that you had state of Vermont folks, you had emergency management, you had a significant group of non-healthcare entities involved in a coalition that you formed. Has that coalition stayed together? Does it continue to meet? Do you continue to talk about what ifs and things like that, or did it end when the last crisis did?
No, I think it took a little bit of time, not a lot of time, a little bit of time to get it stood up back on during COVID. But once it was in place, it was well received. It was everybody really valued the input, the transparency, the information that they received from it. And it was, we maintained it. We've maintained it ever since. We met far less frequently, but we still maintained it. We have since increased the frequency. We meet again this Thursday. We're meeting weekly right now to continue to review right now on the IV solutions.
Right. And that's an important thing. I mean, the problem that I've seen in healthcare over my time in healthcare is that as soon as a crisis is passed and you have survived, things revert to normal, which ain't very good to begin with, which is going back to the same strategies that you used before the crisis took place, forgetting all the lessons that you learned, and waiting to be caught off guard by the next big thing. And you're sounding like that you have put things in place to help avoid that. Is that fair?
I think it's fair to say, in the context of the coalition and the work that body does, the participation, I think I think everybody, all the participants, find it very valuable, and it is a good cross section of folks. And yes, I do agree with that.
That is good. The other thing that happened that Charlie got involved in early on is with Resolink. Resolink is software as a service that gives you what I would call horizon scanning of things going on in the world. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about that and how you have used it?
So we have several services that we use. Resolink is one of them. Resolink's great. It is not healthcare specific in the information that we're receiving from them. It is looking at geopolitical and any potential supply disruptions and communicating those out. So it's the one thing I would say about Resolink is that it's a big umbrella, right? So you're getting a lot of information. There may be, and I don't want to speak out of turn, there may be some services that allow you to narrow that specifically to your purchase history, like we do with ECRI alerts on recall management.
Right.
But without that, without sharing that information, it does become a pretty broad umbrella. You can get overwhelmed with the amount of information that you receive through that service. But But if you're looking for the information, it's a great service to have. We do subscribe to it. We do use it. We monitor day-to-day alerts, and we internally review them for applicability.
Yeah, I know that Charlie had told me that because of one of the services you use, I don't know which one it was, but that he had a heads up that there was going to be a shortage or a disruption in the availability of bauxite, which is a key component of the producing aluminum, and he was able to get plans in place or be aware of what products he might have to find alternative products for. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I'm not familiar with the example that he shared with you, or which of the monitoring systems that we have several, and there's oftentimes a lot of overlap. So we do use Resolink. We also have Supply Risk Solutions, SRS, and that is more of a healthcare focused, similar to the information that you would get from Resolink, but it's more focused on healthcare. We use the Premier Supply Disruption Manager as well, which is not as forward-looking. It's more based off of any delays that they're seeing across the GPO members. If they're seeing delays in order processing or receipts, they start to they've got some correlation, some algorithms that they use to provide some predictive analytics on potential disruption 6 weeks out. So we use that. Resolink, HERC. HERC is more of a accreditation than it is a monitoring solution. Yep. But we've got several disruption management systems that we are using.
HERC is the Health Industry Resilience Collaborative. Is that correct?
That is, yes.
Well, I give myself credit for that one.
Yeah. Sorry. I could have spelled that out for you. Sorry.
So do you think that at the University of Vermont that you have fostered a culture of respond versus react? And if so, what would you recommend to others in situations, geographies such as yours, smaller IDNs that are not near major metropolises and things like that?
Yeah, I think, Fred, this goes back to the earlier question, where certainly the preference is not. I think that the preference would be to certainly respond as opposed to react, right? Just using the language and the framework. However, it goes back to the scale, and it goes back to to what degree and to what extent it's difficult to prepare for everything and prepare for the scale. So I think that it's a balance between what you can do in select areas.
Yeah, and I think what you pointed out that sort of has occurred to me during this conversation is that one of the key things is building good relationships with everyone involved in the process, and even in your case, bringing in folks that wouldn't immediately appear to be involved in the process. Folks from outside of healthcare and local agencies and stuff. So, would it be fair to say that creating and maintaining those relationships leaves you with a infrastructure in place that the next time something does happen, you can flip the switch and get back to effective work more quickly?
I think it does. Yeah, it's not just the participants in the coalition that I was describing for you either. When we think about some of the creative solutions that we had for masks during COVID, it was biomed engineering. It's a very transparent and inclusive process. A lot of internal and external resources as appropriate and applicable. That I think we've done a great job, establishing and maintaining. And so I do think that that's important.
Yeah.
transparency and inclusion.
So with your previous history of your previous work history, would it be fair to say that it's highly unlikely that University of Vermont Health Network would ever have a shortage of access to coffee?
I can't commit to that.
Really?
Really?
Do you guys brew your own coffee, or do you have pods throughout the whole organization?
Nope. No,
Oh,
no commitment there. We're going to focus on patients and patient safety. We do certainly. I just wouldn't. I know that that's intended to be funny, but no, I would not commit to that.
okay. Well, I thought maybe, inside track might help you there. So, that having been said, what keeps you up at night now that is, at the front end of your concern?
Right now, well, I think that what's keeping me up right now is the IV solutions, right, and the recovery and the timing of the recovery. I'm encouraged by a lot of the conservation efforts that we expect will be able to be sustained beyond the recovery. But right now, we certainly still have a gap between when that recovery is going to take place and what our usage rates are. Patient safety and having the supplies that we need for our patients. That's first and foremost.
Did that really has it really impacted revenues, like holding up the key high dollar procedures for you guys?
So we haven't even evaluated. I know that we will do an AAR, an after action review. We'll look at what the impact of some of the costs are during some of our sourcing efforts during the events. We'll look at what the impact is to some of the delayed procedures that we have had, because we have delayed some procedures, especially with some of the large volume irrigation solutions that are recovering a little bit later with the Northcote facility. So I think that we'll look at that after the fact. What we've been looking for is just making sure that we have the solutions that we need to take care of those most needing patients.
Well, Ken, I tell you, I'm really happy to have had you on the podcast today, and I'm happy for you. You're a very fortunate guy from my perspective. You've fallen into friendship with one of the industry's most insightful leaders, most forward thinkers, and you've been able to learn and to be able to assume the reins there. And I know you're going to do great things with your role in the future. So thanks so much for being on the podcast, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Fred, and I look forward to talking to you again too.
Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for joining, and as always, don't forget to subscribe and connect with us online where you can find all of our episodes. If you have a topic you'd like to discuss or want to be a guest on the show, you can reach out to Fred directly at fcrans@stonge.com. See you next time.